everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 and see how this specific phone holds up in the middle part of 2023. Now, I've talked about this phone a lot this year. I think it's still a very interesting phone for the most part that's still definitely worth buying. Would it be the first phone I would recommend to people to buy though? Probably not. This thing is not getting software support anymore, but people still like this phone. So I think there's definitely some room for this phone to be bought there. A few things to keep in mind though. One, I probably would not recommend buying the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 anymore. And the reason for that is because this thing is unsupported with software, but there's still a lot to love about this phone. First of all, you are getting a 6.7-inch Super AMOLED Plus display on the front of this thing. It's 1080p, it's 60 Hz, but I still think it's a decent panel, and it actually looks very similar to a lot of phones we're getting nowadays, so it's a fairly modern looking phone, even though it did come out back, in 2020. So a lot of phones that came out in 2020 may not be the most modern thing of all time, but this thing actually looks pretty decent, which I'm actually really happy about and really happy to see. Now, moving on to basically the rest of the phone, you have a USB-C port at the bottom, and you have that S Pen. And that S Pen is really cool, as I mentioned, because you're able to basically go through and you can use it as a stylus. So that's always been something that's really cool. You're also able to go through and basically use this phone as a regular phone if you want to without using the stylus. On the back, the weirdest thing ever, they put a frosted plastic back on this thing. I still am very weirded out by it, but I think it's okay. But definitely that's been one thing that I feel like where the Note lineup started sinking a little bit. And I feel like personally, Samsung could have probably done a little bit of a better job there. But again, what are we going to do? We can't go back in time and change things like this. So in terms of the outside, it still looks pretty good. We are getting wireless charging and reverse wireless charging, IP certification. So still a very capable phone in a lot of ways, but it probably is just an interesting phone when it comes down to it. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of the camera, we're getting a triple camera setup on this thing, a wide telephoto and ultra wide lens, and we're getting a wide angle lens on the front. Now we can do 8K video on the back, which is actually pretty crazy. And we can do 4K at 60 on the front, which is also very, very good. So with a phone like the Galaxy Note 20, this is a phone that still has a lot of power and has a lot of capability. And that's something that I love seeing with a phone like this. It's still going to be very powerful in terms of the camera, and the hardware of this phone in terms of the camera is actually going to be very good, especially when compared to something like the, maybe some other phones that we're getting nowadays. So I think that's something that's really cool, and the camera is still something that I look at. It's a pretty good camera. Now, in terms of the performance behind this phone, this thing does have that Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset inside with 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, when it comes down to the performance behind this phone, is it a perfect performing device? Probably not. There's definitely been phones out there that are better performing than this thing, but I do think when you think about it, a phone like the Galaxy Note 20, it's still actually a decent performing device for how old it is. You would never think that a phone like this is still like a decent performing device. I think that's probably the best way to put it, but it actually is. And that's something that I really do like and prefer with a phone like this. I think there's been phones that came out even around the same time that weren't as good of a performing phone as this thing. And, I think that's one thing to keep in mind. But regardless, the Note 20, I think is still pretty decent in that standpoint. So to sum it up, like I mentioned, I think this phone is very important in some ways, but the problem with the Note 20 is that it's just not getting software support. So that's the issue that we're having, is that if you're getting a phone that doesn't have any more software support, what's the point of even buying it, if I'm being honest? So just keep that in the back of your head. But regardless, I do think a phone like the Note 20, still, a good phone. I just don't really think it's worth buying anymore because it's getting to that outdated spot. So that covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.